In a quiet neighborhood where white houses stood in perfect rows, there lived a girl named Jenny. She was 17 years old, with dark brown hair that fell softly around her shoulders and gentle green eyes that seemed to hold many unspoken words. Jenny's house looked beautiful from the outside, with its red door and small garden filled with roses. But inside, the air felt heavy with silence and sadness. Jenny lived with her parents and her older brother, Mark. Her father, David, was a businessman who always wore expensive suits and spoke in a loud, commanding voice. Her mother, Patricia, spent her days keeping the house perfect and worrying about what the neighbors might think. Mark was 22 years old, tall and confident like his father, and he had always been the favorite child in the family. The Williams family seemed perfect to everyone who looked from the outside. They had money, a beautiful home, and successful careers. But Jenny knew the truth that nobody else could see. In this house, her voice didn't matter. Her feelings were invisible. Her dreams were forgotten. She was the silent daughter, living in the shadows of her family's expectations. Every morning, Jenny would wake up in her small bedroom at the back of the house. The room was painted pale yellow, but somehow it always felt gray to her. She would sit by her window, looking out at the world beyond, wondering if anyone would ever truly see her for who she was. The birds outside sang their beautiful songs freely, and Jenny often wished she could do the same. This is the story of how Jenny found her voice. It's a story about growing up in a family where love came with conditions, where being seen meant being perfect, and where speaking up seemed impossible. But most importantly, it's a story about courage, hope, and the power of believing in yourself, even when nobody else does. Chapter 1. The Quiet Child. Jenny's story began when she was just 7 years old. Even then, she was different from her brother, Mark. While Mark was loud and demanding, always getting what he wanted, Jenny was quiet and thoughtful. She loved to draw pictures of flowers and animals, and she would spend hours reading books in the corner of the living room. "Jenny, be quiet," her mother would say whenever Jenny tried to share something exciting from her day at school. "Can't you see Daddy is trying to read his newspaper? Why can't you be more like your brother?" her father would ask when Jenny brought home a report card full of A's and B's. Mark was the top student in his class when he was your age. Jenny learned early that her achievements were never quite good enough. When she won second place in a school art competition, her parents barely looked at her drawing. But when Mark scored a goal in his soccer game, the whole family celebrated with ice cream and praise. At dinner time, the family would sit around the big wooden table in their dining room. Mark would talk loudly about his day, his friends, and his plans. Their parents would listen with interest, asking questions and laughing at his jokes. Jenny would sit quietly, cutting her food into small pieces, waiting for someone to ask her about her day. But that question never came. "May I tell you about the story I wrote today?" Jenny asked one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not now, honey," her mother replied, not even looking at her. "Mark is telling us about his baseball tryouts." Jenny's heart sank a little deeper into her chest. She folded her hands in her lap and listened to Mark's story, even though she had heard it twice already. Her own story about the brave princess who saved her kingdom remained locked inside her heart, along with so many other words that nobody wanted to hear. School was Jenny's escape. There, she could raise her hand to answer questions, and her teacher, Mrs. Miller, would smile and nod with encouragement. Jenny loved reading time, when the classroom became quiet and she could lose herself in adventures far away from her real life. "You have such a beautiful imagination, Jenny," Mrs. Miller told her one day after reading one of her creative writing assignments. "Never stop writing and dreaming." But at home, Jenny's imagination was seen as daydreaming, and her dreams were considered unrealistic. When she told her parents that she wanted to be a writer someday, they exchanged a look that made her feel small and foolish. "Writing isn't a real job, sweetheart," her father said, not looking up from his phone. "You need to think about practical careers like business or medicine." "But I love writing stories," Jenny whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "Love doesn't pay the bills," her mother added, already moving on to organize Mark's soccer uniform for the next day. Jenny ran to her room and closed the door softly behind her. She pulled out her secret notebook from under her mattress and began to write. On paper, she could say everything she felt. On paper, her voice was strong and clear. On paper, she mattered. As the years passed, Jenny became more and more invisible in her own home. She learned to walk quietly so she wouldn't disturb anyone. She learned to keep her opinions to herself. She learned that being seen meant being criticized, so it was safer to remain unseen. But deep inside her heart, a small flame of hope continued to burn. Jenny dreamed of a day when someone would listen to her words, value her thoughts, and love her just as she was. She didn't know it yet, but that day would come sooner than she expected. Chapter 2: The Teenage Years. When Jenny turned 15, the silence in her life became even heavier. Her parents' expectations grew higher, and their patience with anything that didn't fit their perfect family image grew shorter. Mark was now in college, studying business just like their father wanted, and he had become the golden example that Jenny could never match. "Why can't you be more social like Mark was?" her mother would ask when Jenny preferred to stay home reading rather than going to parties. "You need to make friends, Jenny. What will people think?" Jenny tried to explain that she did have friends at school, quiet friends like herself who loved books and art. But these friendships didn't count in her parents' eyes because they weren't popular or impressive enough. High school brought new challenges. Jenny was a good student, but she struggled with speaking up in class discussions. When teachers called on her, her voice would shake, and sometimes the words would get stuck in her throat. Other students seemed so confident, so sure of their opinions, while Jenny questioned everything she wanted to say. "You're too shy, Jenny," her guidance counselor, Mr. Roberts, said during a meeting about college plans. "You have good grades, but colleges want to see leadership and participation. You need to join clubs, give presentations, show that you can communicate." Jenny nodded quietly, but inside she felt hopeless. How could she lead others when she couldn't even speak up for herself at home? At dinner one evening, her parents were discussing Mark's latest achievements at college. He had joined the debate team and won several competitions. "I'm so proud of Mark," her father said, beaming with joy. "He's going to be a powerful speaker just like his old man." Jenny gathered her courage and cleared her throat softly. I joined the school newspaper," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Her parents looked at her with surprise, as if they had forgotten she was sitting at the table. "That's nice, dear," her mother said in a tone that suggested it wasn't really nice at all. "But writing for a school paper isn't the same as real leadership. Maybe you should try something more visible." Jenny's cheeks burned with embarrassment. She had been so excited about joining the newspaper, about finally finding a place where her writing could be shared. But once again, her achievement was dismissed as not good enough. "The newspaper is important," Jenny said, her voice growing slightly stronger. "We write about issues that matter to students. We give voice to—" "Don't argue with your mother," her father interrupted firmly. "She's trying to help you become more successful." Jenny's words died in her throat. She looked down at her plate and didn't speak for the rest of the meal. That night, alone in her room, Jenny wrote in her diary about her frustration. She wrote about feeling like a ghost in her own family, invisible and unheard. She wrote about the dreams she carried in her heart, dreams that felt further away with each passing day. The next morning, Jenny's English teacher, Ms. Anderson, handed back their latest essays. On Jenny's paper, written in red ink at the top, were the words, "Exceptional work, Jenny. Your voice is powerful and authentic. Never let anyone silence it." Jenny read those words over and over again during lunch, sitting alone at her usual table by the window. For the first time in weeks, she smiled genuinely. Someone believed in her voice, even if that someone wasn't her family. But the happiness was short-lived. When Jenny arrived home that afternoon, she found her parents in the living room with serious expressions on their faces. "We need to talk," her father said, gesturing for her to sit down. Jenny's heart began to race. Had she done something wrong? "Your grades are good," her mother began, "but we're concerned about your future. You're almost 16, and you still don't have any real goals or ambitions." "I do have goals," Jenny said quietly. "I want to study journalism and—" "Journalism?" Her father laughed, but not in a kind way. "Jenny, be realistic. That's not a stable career. We're not going to support impossible dreams." "But it's what I love," Jenny started to say. "Love isn't enough," her mother interrupted. "We've decided that you should focus on preparing for business school, like Mark. You can take some writing classes as a hobby, but your main focus needs to be practical." Jenny felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room. They were planning her entire future without considering what she wanted, what made her happy, or what she was good at. "But I'm not like Mark," Jenny said, her voice barely audible. "I'm different. I have different dreams." "Different isn't always better," her father said, standing up to signal that the conversation was over. "We know what's best for you, Jenny. Trust us." As her parents left the room, Jenny sat alone on the couch, feeling more isolated than ever. She realized that in her family, being different meant being wrong. Having her own dreams meant being ungrateful. Speaking her truth meant being difficult. That night, Jenny made a decision that would change the course of her life. She decided to start keeping a secret journal where she would write down every feeling, every dream, and every word that her family refused to hear. She didn't know it yet, but this journal would become the key to finding her voice. Chapter 3: The Breaking Point. By the time Jenny turned 17, the weight of living in silence had become almost unbearable. Her parents had enrolled her in business classes for the summer, despite her protests. Mark had graduated college and was now working at their father's company, receiving praise and recognition for every small accomplishment. Jenny felt like she was disappearing a little more each day. The summer business classes were torture for Jenny. While other students seemed excited about marketing strategies and profit margins, Jenny found herself daydreaming about the stories she wanted to write, the articles she wanted to publish, the voices she wanted to give to people who, like her, felt unheard. "You're not paying attention again, are you?" her father said one evening after receiving a call from her instructor. "Mrs. Patterson says you seem distracted in class." I don't think business is for me," Jenny replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Not for you," her mother scoffed. "Jenny, you're 17 years old. You don't know what's for you yet. We do." "When I was your age," her father added, "I didn't get to choose what I liked. I did what needed to be done. And look how successful I became." Jenny looked at her father's success, the big house, the expensive car, the respect from colleagues. But she also saw the stress lines on his face, the way he never seemed truly happy, the way he came home every evening looking exhausted and frustrated. "What if success means something different to me?" Jenny asked, her voice growing slightly stronger with desperation. Her parents exchanged one of their looks, the kind that made Jenny feel like a problem to be solved rather than a daughter to be loved. "Jenny," her mother said with forced patience, "you're being naive. Success means security, respect, and financial stability. Your little writing hobby won't give you any of those things." "It's not a hobby," Jenny said, her emotions finally breaking through her usual calm exterior. "It's my passion, it's who I am." "No," her father said firmly, his voice rising. "Who you are is our daughter, and our daughter will not waste her life on unrealistic dreams. End of discussion." But something inside Jenny had shifted. Maybe it was the months of suppressed feelings, or maybe it was the realization that she was about to enter her final year of high school and her parents were making decisions that would affect the rest of her life. For the first time in years, she didn't stay quiet. "You never listen to me," Jenny said, her voice shaking with emotion. "You never ask what I want or how I feel. You just decide what's best for me without knowing who I really am." The room fell silent. Her parents stared at her with shock, as if a piece of furniture had suddenly started speaking. "How dare you speak to us like that?" her mother said, her voice cold and sharp. "After everything we've done for you, everything we've given you, this is how you show gratitude." "I am grateful," Jenny said, tears starting to form in her eyes. "But gratitude doesn't mean giving up my dreams. It doesn't mean pretending to be someone I'm not. Go to your room, her father commanded. And don't come out until you're ready to apologize and have a mature conversation about your future. Jenny ran upstairs, but for the first time, she wasn't running away in defeat. She was running toward something, toward the truth that had been building inside her for years. In her room, Jenny pulled out all of her secret journals and notebooks. Page after page of stories, poems, articles, and dreams filled her hands. This was who she really was. This was her true voice, the voice that her family had never heard because they had never bothered to listen. She spent the entire night reading through her writing, and as she read, she began to see a pattern. Every story she wrote was about someone finding the courage to speak up. Every poem was about feeling invisible and longing to be seen. Every article was about giving voice to the voiceless. Jenny realized that she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. She had been practicing courage on paper, and now it was time to practice it in real life. The next morning, Jenny didn't go downstairs for breakfast. Instead, she sat at her desk and began writing the most important piece she had ever written, a letter to her family. In this letter, she would finally say everything she had been holding inside for 17 years. As she wrote, Jenny felt something she had never experienced before. She felt powerful. She felt authentic. She felt like herself. When she finished the letter, Jenny read it through 3 times. It was honest, respectful, but firm. It was her voice, clear and strong, speaking her truth without apology. Jenny folded the letter carefully and put it in her pocket. Tonight, at dinner, she would read it aloud to her family. Tonight, the silent daughter would finally speak. She didn't know how her parents would react. She didn't know if they would listen or if they would just get angry again. But she knew that she couldn't stay silent any longer. She had found her courage, and she was ready to use it. As Jenny looked at herself in the mirror that morning, she saw something different in her green eyes. She saw strength. She saw determination. She saw a young woman who was ready to fight for her right to be heard. The silent daughter was about to find her voice, and nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 4: Finding Her Voice. That evening, Jenny came downstairs for dinner with the letter folded in her pocket and her heart beating fast in her chest. Her parents were already seated at the dining table, their expressions still cold from the argument the night before. Mark had come home for dinner, and he was telling their parents about his latest project at work. And then I suggested a completely new approach to the marketing strategy, Mark was saying, his voice confident and animated. My supervisor was so impressed that he's considering me for a promotion. That's wonderful, son, their father said with genuine pride. You're really making a name for yourself. Jenny sat down quietly, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her napkin. The letter in her pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Jenny, her mother said without looking at her, I hope you've thought about what we discussed yesterday. Your father and I have been talking, and we think it would be best if you started tutoring sessions for advanced business math this summer. Jenny's heart sank. They were still planning her life without considering her feelings, but tonight would be different. Tonight she would speak. Actually, Jenny said, her voice quiet but steady, I have something I need to say to all of you. The table fell silent. Mark looked at her with curiosity, while her parents exchanged another one of their looks. Jenny, if this is about yesterday, her father began. Please, Jenny interrupted, surprising herself with her firmness. Please just let me speak. She pulled the letter from her pocket and unfolded it with shaking hands. The paper rustled in the quiet room, and Jenny could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. I've written this down because I've never been able to say these things out loud in this house, Jenny began, her voice growing stronger with each word. And I need you to hear them. She cleared her throat and began to read. Dear Mom, Dad, and Mark, my name is Jenny, and I am your daughter and sister. I am 17 years old, and for most of my life, I have felt invisible in my own family. I have watched conversations happen around me without being included. I have shared my achievements and been told they're not good enough. I have expressed my dreams and been told they're unrealistic. I want you to know who I really am, not who you think I should be. I am a writer, not because it's a hobby or a phase, but because it's how I understand the world. It's how I connect with other people. It's how I make sense of my feelings and experiences. When I write, I help other people feel less alone. When I tell stories, I give voice to characters who are struggling to be heard, just like I am. When I write articles for the school newspaper, I shine light on issues that matter to students who often feel voiceless. This is not a waste of time. This is not unrealistic. This is who I am, and it's what I'm good at. My English teachers have told me that my writing has power and authenticity. My articles in the school newspaper have helped change policies and bring attention to important issues. I have won writing contests and received recognition for my work. But none of this. I'm going to use my voice to help other people find theirs. And I hope that someday you will be proud of me for being true to myself, rather than disappointed in me for not being someone else. I don't need you to understand my dreams, but I do need you to respect them. I don't need you to share my passions, but I do need you to stop trying to destroy them. Most of all, I need you to see me, really see me, and accept me for who I am. I am not the silent daughter anymore. I have found my voice, and I will not let anyone silence it again. With love and hope. Jenny, when Jenny finished reading, the dining room was completely quiet. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, though it was probably only a few seconds. Jenny folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table in front of her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Mark was the first to speak. "Jenny," he said softly, and when she looked at him, she saw something in his expression that she had never seen before: respect. Her mother's eyes were filled with tears, but Jenny couldn't tell if they were tears of anger, sadness, or something else. Her father sat back in his chair, looking at Jenny as if he was seeing her for the first time. Her mother started to speak, then stopped. She wiped her eyes with her napkin and looked directly at Jenny. "I had no idea you felt this way." "I tried to tell you," Jenny said, her voice still strong despite the emotional weight of the moment. "Many times, but you never listened." "We thought we were helping you," her father said quietly. "We thought we were protecting you from disappointment and failure." "But you were protecting me from myself," Jenny replied. "And in trying to save me from failure, you were guaranteeing that I would fail at being happy." Mark cleared his throat. "Jenny, I owe you an apology too. I never realized that I was taking up all the space in this family. I never thought about how my success might make you feel invisible." Jenny looked at her brother with surprise. She had never expected him to understand, let alone apologize. "I don't want you to feel bad about your success," Jenny told him. "I just want room for my own." Their father leaned forward and picked up Jenny's letter, reading it again silently. When he finished, he looked at Jenny with an expression she had never seen before, an expression of genuine interest and curiosity. "Tell me about these writing contests you've won," he said, "and the articles that changed school policies. I want to hear about your real achievements, not the ones I thought you should have." For the next hour, Jenny talked about her writing, her dreams, and her plans for the future. Her family listened, really listened, for the first time in her memory. They asked questions, showed interest, and began to see her as the person she truly was rather than the person they had wanted her to be. It wasn't a perfect conversation. There were still moments of tension and misunderstanding, but it was a beginning. It was the start of Jenny being seen and heard in her own family. As they cleared the dishes after dinner, Jenny's mother put her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Jenny," she said, and this time Jenny could hear the sincerity in her voice. "I'm sorry we made you feel invisible. I'm sorry we didn't listen. And I'm sorry it took you writing a letter for us to finally hear you." Jenny hugged her mother, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders that she had been carrying for years. "Thank you for listening now," Jenny whispered. "That's all I ever wanted." Chapter 5, The New Beginning. 3 months later, Jenny stood in front of her bathroom mirror, getting ready for her first day of senior year. But this time, when she looked at her reflection, she saw someone completely different from the girl who had stared back at her just a few months ago. The change hadn't happened overnight. After the dinner where Jenny finally spoke her truth, her family had to learn how to communicate with each other in new ways. There were still difficult conversations, moments of frustration, and times when old patterns tried to resurface. But something fundamental had shifted in the Williams household. Jenny's parents had started asking her about her day, her writing, and her thoughts on various topics. They didn't always understand her perspective, but they were trying to listen. Her father had even read some of her published articles in the school newspaper and admitted that he was impressed by her talent and the important issues she covered. "You have a gift for making people care about things they might not have noticed before," he had told her one evening. It was the first time he had ever acknowledged her writing as valuable. Her mother had begun to see Jenny's quiet nature not as shyness that needed to be fixed, but as thoughtfulness that should be appreciated. She stopped comparing Jenny to Mark and started appreciating the unique qualities that made Jenny special. Mark had become an unexpected ally. He had started including Jenny in conversations and asking for her opinions on things. He even helped her research journalism programs at different universities, using his business connections to introduce her to people working in media and communications. "You know," Mark had said one day while helping Jenny with her college applications, "I always thought you were just quiet because you didn't have anything to say. I never realized you had so much to say, but no one was listening." The changes weren't just happening within Jenny's family. At school, Jenny had become more confident and vocal. She started participating more in class discussions, sharing her ideas without the fear that had held her back for so long. Her teachers noticed the change and encouraged her to take on more leadership roles. Jenny had been elected editor-in-chief of the school newspaper for her senior year, a position that required her to speak at meetings, make decisions, and guide other students. The shy girl who once couldn't speak up in her own home was now helping other students find their voices through journalism. "You've really blossomed this year," Ms. Anderson, her English teacher, told her one afternoon. "It's like you've finally found your confidence." "I think I've finally found my voice," Jenny corrected with a smile. "It was always there. I just needed to learn how to use it." Jenny had also started a writing club at school for students who felt like outsiders or who struggled to express themselves. The club met once a week, and students would share their writing, discuss their feelings, and support each other in finding the courage to speak up about issues that mattered to them. "Writing saved my life," Jenny told the group during their first meeting. "It taught me that my thoughts and feelings matter, even when other people don't seem to think so. I want all of you to know that your voices matter too." The club grew from 5 students to 25 students within a few months. Jenny had created a safe space where quiet voices could become strong, where students could practice courage on paper before practicing it in real life. At home, dinner conversations had become something Jenny looked forward to rather than endured. Her family had learned to balance the conversation, making sure everyone had a chance to speak and be heard. Jenny would share stories about her students, her articles, and her college preparation. Her parents would listen with genuine interest and pride. One evening, while discussing her college applications, Jenny's father surprised her with an announcement. "I've been thinking about what you said about success meaning different things to different people," he said, setting down his coffee cup. "And I realize that I've been measuring success only in terms of money and status. But watching you this year, seeing how happy you are when you're writing, how much you help other students, I think you've taught me that success is also about doing what you love and making a positive impact on others." Jenny felt tears of happiness forming in her eyes. "Thank you, Dad. That means everything to me." "I want you to know," her mother added, "that we will support your decision to study journalism. We may not understand everything about it, but we understand that it's important to you, and that makes it important to us." As Jenny's senior year progressed, she began receiving acceptance letters from universities with strong journalism programs. Each acceptance felt like a validation of her choice to speak up for her dreams. The day she received her acceptance letter from her first-choice school, a university known for its excellent journalism program and its commitment to giving voice to underrepresented communities, Jenny ran downstairs to share the news with her family. "I got in," she announced, waving the letter in the air. "I got into Northwestern." Her parents hugged her with genuine joy and pride. Mark picked her up and spun her around, cheering with excitement. "We're so proud of you, Jenny," her mother said, tears streaming down her face. "Not just for getting into a good school, but for having the courage to follow your dreams despite all the obstacles we put in your way." That night, Jenny sat in her room, looking through all the journals and notebooks she had filled over the years. She thought about the scared little girl who used to write her feelings in secret, afraid that no one would care about her thoughts or dreams. She thought about the teenage girl who felt invisible and voiceless, who believed that her family would never understand or accept her. And she looked at the confident young woman she had become, someone who had learned to speak up for herself, to value her own voice, and to help others find their voices too. Jenny realized that finding her voice hadn't just changed her relationship with her. As she prepared for bed, Jenny wrote one final entry in her high school journal. "Tonight, I am not the silent daughter anymore. I am Jenny Williams, and I have a voice. I have used that voice to speak my truth, to change my family, to help other students, and to fight for my dreams. Tomorrow, I will use my voice to write stories that matter, to give voice to people who need to be heard, and to make the world a little bit better. My voice is powerful, and I will never let anyone silence it again." Epilogue: The voice that changed everything. 5 years later, Jenny sat in a small coffee shop in Chicago, typing the final sentences of an article on her laptop. She was now a successful journalist working for a major newspaper, specializing in stories about young people who had overcome challenges to achieve their dreams. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her mother. "Saw your article about teen mental health in today's paper. Your father and I are so proud of you. You're changing lives with your writing. Love you." Jenny smiled as she closed her laptop. Her relationship with her family had continued to grow and strengthen over the years. They had learned to appreciate her for who she was, and she had learned to forgive them for the years when they couldn't see her clearly. Mark had become one of her biggest supporters, often sharing her articles on social media and introducing her to contacts who could help further her career. He had learned to use his success to lift others up rather than overshadowing them. Her parents had attended her college graduation with tears of pride in their eyes. They had watched her receive awards for her journalism and had finally understood that success could look different from what they had imagined. But the most important change was in Jenny herself. She had learned that finding your voice isn't just about speaking up once. It's about continuing to speak up every day, for yourself and for others who need to be heard. As Jenny walked out of the coffee shop and into the busy Chicago street, she thought about all the young people who had written to her after reading her articles, thanking her for giving them courage to speak up in their own lives. She thought about the high school students she mentored, teaching them that their voices mattered and their stories deserved to be told. She thought about the writing club she had started, which had now expanded to 5 different schools and helped hundreds of students find their confidence. Jenny had learned that courage is contagious. When one person finds the strength to speak up, it gives others permission to do the same. Her voice had not only changed her own life, it had created ripples of change that spread far beyond what she had ever imagined. That evening, Jenny called her parents like she did every Sunday. During their conversation, her father mentioned that he had started asking his employees for their opinions and ideas more often, inspired by watching how Jenny's voice had transformed their family. Her mother shared that she had joined a book club and was learning to express her own opinions about the stories they read, something she had never felt confident doing before. Even Mark had been influenced by Jenny's journey. He had started a mentorship program at his company to help young employees find their voices and advance their careers. The silent daughter had become a catalyst for change, not just in her own life, but in the lives of everyone around her. As Jenny hung up the phone and prepared for bed in her small Chicago apartment, she looked at the framed photo on her nightstand. It was a picture of her family from her college graduation day, all of them smiling genuinely and genuinely happy. But next to that photo was something even more precious. A handwritten letter from a teenage girl named Sarah, who had read one of Jenny's articles about finding your voice. "Dear Jenny," the letter read, "I used to be just like you, invisible in my own family, afraid to speak up for what I believed in. But your story gave me courage to have a difficult conversation with my parents about my dreams. It wasn't easy, but they listened, really listened. And now I'm applying to art school, something I never thought I'd have the courage to do. Thank you for showing me that my voice matters. You changed my life." Jenny kept this letter, and dozens of others like it, as reminders of why her voice mattered, why speaking up had been worth the fear and difficulty. She had learned that being silent might feel safer in the moment, but finding your voice is what makes life worth living. It's what allows you to be truly yourself, to connect with others authentically, and to make a difference in the world. The girl who had once written her feelings in secret journals, afraid that no one would care about her thoughts, had become a woman whose voice reached thousands of people every day through her writing. The teenager who had felt invisible in her own family had become someone who helped other invisible people become seen. The silent daughter had found her voice, and in doing so, had given others permission to find theirs too. And this, Jenny knew, was the most important story she would ever tell, not just through her writing, but through her life. It was a story about the power of courage, the importance of speaking up for yourself, and the beautiful truth that every voice matters, including yours. No matter how quiet you might feel today, no matter how invisible you might seem to others, your voice has power. Your thoughts matter. Your dreams are valid. And somewhere, someone needs to hear exactly what you have to say. The silent daughter had learned this truth, and now she spent her life helping others discover it too. Because every voice deserves to be heard, and every person deserves to be seen for who they truly are. Jenny's story was no longer about finding her voice. It was about using her voice to change the world, one person at a time. And that made all the silence, all the struggle, and all the courage worth it.